So, since today is Tu B'Shvat, so our Sikha will be on the topic of Tu B'Shvat over here. Now, the Rebbe usually called it Chamisha Asar B'Shvat. He always called it Chamisha Asar B'Shvat and also Chamisha Asar B'Ov. I remember a discussion with some friends of mine or other people if the Rebbe ever used the term Tu B'Ov or Tu B'Shvat. Anyway, regardless, concerning the 15th of Shvat, we know it's Rosh Hashanah for the trees, and there's many places where the Rebbe derives different lessons and different ideas from the fact of Rosh Hashanah L'Ilonis, that's a Rosh Hashanah for trees. In this Sikha, the Rebbe is going to focus on specifically the idea of trees having to do with fruits. There's 7 minim shenishtabchem b'Eretz Yisrael. There is wheat, there's barley, but those are not trees. And then there's the different fruits that grow on trees, and that's the main celebration of Tu B'Shvat. That we had dates and olives and figs and pomegranates. These are fruits that nishtabcha b'Eretz Yisrael. The Eretz Yisrael was praised with it. And the Rebbe in the Sikha is going to focus on the idea of what is the point of specifically that the celebration of the 15th of Shvat has to do with fruits more than just general, also including bread and wheat and so on. Bread, wheat, and barley. So he says, we're going to skip the titles that he has over here. Benegel, Chamish Asar B'Shvat, Isa b'Magen Avram, Shenoigim l'harbis b'minei peiros shel ilonos. The custom is to eat fruits. It doesn't say we eat a lot of cake, or we eat a lot of bread, or we eat a lot of mushroom barley soup. It's fruits that we eat a lot of. V'chein huva b'ashlam l'shulchan aruch rabbeinu zal l'lamdechem in the bravna shenoigim l'harbis boy b'minei peiros shel ilonos. Again, the emphasis is on fruits of the trees. In Peiros Eretz Yisrael. What fruits specifically do we put special emphasis on? Oisam HaPeiros shebehem nishtabcha Eretz Yisrael. There's a list of Peiros in the pasuk with which Eretz Yisrael was praised. Those are the main focus of the 15th of Shvat. The Rebbe tries to connect everything with the Geula. Since we're talking about fruits that Eretz Yisrael is well known for, so therefore the Yom Tov, the celebration of the 15th of Shvat, has to do with the Geula Asidah when we will all come back to Eretz Yisrael. Kol hamugdam bepasuk zeh mugdam lebracha, shenemar eretz chita u'sa'ira, a land of wheat and barley, v'gefen and the vine, v'teina and figs, v'rimoin and pomegranates, eretz zeis shemen udvash, a land of olive oil, meaning the fruits of the olive, and honey. Honey, when it talks in the Torah about dvash, about honey, we're not talking about honey from bees. In those days, the custom was honey was made primarily, or the main thing of honey was from dates. So when it refers to dvash, it's talking about dates, dvash tamarim. So there's a halacha that if a person has different foods in front of them, and he doesn't have a favorite food amongst them, so then which should he make a bracha on first? So whichever is earlier and said previous in the pasuk of this pasuk that we just enumerated, that's the one that you make the bracha on first. So if you have, let's say, bread or cake on the table, and you have, let's say, grapes on the table, so you first would make on bread, and then you'd make a bracha on grapes. That's why so Shabbos, it's the whole thing. You cover the bread, and you make the kiddush on the wine, because you're making kiddush on the wine, it's out of order, etc. And the same thing if you have olives and you have grapes, so you would make the bracha on the grape instead of on the olive, even though they're the same bracha, but the bracha you would make would be on the on the grape, for example. So therefore, like he says, "V'chein kasher menachem lefon of beis min Michael arei haseder v'akdimah b'zeh nikval piseder hakosov eretz chita v'soida v'goymer." I once heard that they used to test. Sometimes this kibbutz get very complicated when you have different types of food. Which food to choose from, depending on different factors. So I heard that in the olden days, one of the ways I used to test a rabbi to see if he's takin knows how to learn, if he's a rav that's really a rav, they used to put down assorted foods on the table, and they used to see which one did he make the bracha on first, which one second, whatever. This showed that he was proficient in that, in those halachas. Anyway, Al Pisa in a move on. Madua lemetzinu minhag miyuchad b'chamishaser b'shvat b'negel divrei Michael anaisim mechita v'soida shem koydem v'pasik lepeiros eilanas gefen teina v'riman goymer. If they're earlier in the pasuk, and that's why we make a bracha on them first, so why is there no custom about eating bread or barley or cake or whatever? The custom that's brought down, we said before from Shulchan Aruch, is to eat fruits of the tree. The Rebbe even mentioned by one of the Fabrengens when he posed this question that even though here we do have, by every Fabrengen that Rebbe had, there was some mezainis, there was some cake on the table. But again, he said the main focus is not the cake, the main focus is for Tu B'Shvat, that we brought the fruit here to the table. Amr Le'il, B'Magn, Avram Valderch, the Sefer Prietz Hadar, Mudgish rak haminig lechel peiris shalilonis gefen v'teina v'rima in zeh shemen zeisim v'dvash tmarim avaloi chita v'soyra l'mroi shal dea achas oise ilon she'achal adam rishon menu chita haya. In other words, that in the you could call a wheat plant or a wheat stalk, you could call it a tree, because it says, according to one opinion, that when Adam ate from the Eitz Hadas, it was actually he ate wheat, not a fruit, as we call it fruits. One of the opinions is that it was a chita. So we see that under the category of ilonois, Elon ate, it also goes in chita. But that's not the common custom. Is not about looking for eating wheat and barley. The common custom is to eat fruits. So the question is, since wheat and barley is the first thing in the pasuk, and they're more important to such a degree that they are first valued in making a bracha, so why on the 15th of Shvat, when we're celebrating the minim shenishtabchu b'Eretz Yisrael, do we have such a big deal about the fruits of the tree? B'chdei levayer yesh lahagdim b'toyres chag yomtiv loy musker 15 b'Shvat b'toyres Shebiksav b'dugmas gimel haragolim Pesach Shavuos Sukkos kiyotz b'zeh v'gam loy b'toyres Shval Peh k'Chanukah u'Purim hanekroim shem yom tovim v'imrehem ala nisim. We don't find, not in Tanakh, not in Torah Shval Peh, the Yom Tov of the 15th of Shvat. But Mishnah Niskerak shechamish also b'Shvat Rosh Hashanah li'ilon. At most, what does it say? There's a Mishnah in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah that speaks about 4 different times of the year that's called Rosh Hashanah. And one of them is Shvat. You have the 15th of Shvat, or the 1st of Shvat, according to Beis Shammai, which is a Rosh Hashanah for the tree. But the Mishnah is not talking about making a celebration. The Mishnah is not talking over there about making it into a Yom Tov, because there's other dates that it says over there. Rosh Chodesh Elul talks about is a Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema. Rosh Chodesh Nisan is a Rosh Hashanah for kings. Whatever that means, it's not a time of celebration. The word Rosh Hashanah in that Mishnah only means it's the beginning of that era, of that period. It has nothing to do with a celebration. The Mishnah is Karak Chamish also B'Shvat Rosh Hashanah Le'ilon L'das Beis Hillel. Ay Echad B'Shvat L'das. This is a very bad mistake. It's supposed to say Beis Shammai. It was obviously in the Rosh Tevis, and somehow it came out with Baruch Shamar. Anyway, so it's a machlokes over there in the Mishnah if it's the 15th of Shvat, or Beis Shammai says it's the 1st of Shvat. We go according to Beis Hillel, so we celebrate on the 15th of Shvat. Avaloi nis musker dvaver b'Mishnah b'negel lachashiv shel tes va b'Shvat b'toyres chag. It's not a Yom Tov, it's not a holiday. According to the first Tana in the Mishnah, the first day of Elul is Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema, but there's no celebration. We don't say, oh, now we've come to the first of Elul. Let's celebrate this Yom Tov, the Rosh Hashanah for animals. Nobody celebrates it. So therefore, in the Mishnah that mentions Rosh Hashanah for the trees, it's not mentioned as a celebration. So we don't find it not in Gemara, not in Chumash, not in Navi, not in Ksuvim. We don't find anything about the 15th of Shvat, the Rosh Hashanah Lilanus, being a time of a celebration. The entire thing is not a matter of halacha. It's not brought down even in the Gemara. Rather, it's a custom. And the custom is also concerning the eating the peiros. First, to celebrate as a Yom Tov as a custom. And secondly, to eat fruits is also a custom. In the Beis Hamikdash, during Sukkot, they would pour water over the Mizbeach during the offering of the Karbonos, similar to the wine that was brought by all the Karbonos throughout the year. And that pouring of the water brought about great joy. It's the famous thing, Simchas Beis HaSheva. It was the Simcha of the drawing of water. So the Alter Rebbe says that the pouring of the water on the Mizbeach on Sukkot is much greater than the pouring of the wine all year round. One is explicit in the Torah. The other is something that was transmitted to Moshe on Har Sinai. There's no explicit mention in the Torah that on Sukkot we should pour water on the Mizbeach. The Alter Rebbe explains in the Maimer that some things are too high, too lofty to be able to be encapsulated in the words of the Torah. So therefore, the idea of what's called the water libation on Sukkot was not written in Torah Shebiksav, but it's much greater because it wasn't written down. In a similar vein, it's brought down concerning customs. Customs that Yidden do, even though seemingly they don't have the strong obligation like a mitzvah min Torah, still in all, it's something that has a very high source, and therefore it couldn't have been articulated in the Torah. The Rebbe always brings an example of this, that hakafis on Simchas Torah is not written down, not in the Gemara, definitely not in the written Torah. It's only something that the Ramah brings down like as a side thing. There are those that have a custom to go around the bimah with the Torah. It's just a custom, but that's a very, very high custom. It's a very, very high source, and that's why it only expressed itself in a minhag. It only comes down in a minhag. So now the Rebbe is going to say on the top of the next page, this is the same idea of the 15th of Shvat. Not in the written Torah, not even in the Gemara and the oral Torah, but it's only a custom because it's so high. There's a movement in Yaneinu, Milas Haminhag the Chamish also B'Shvat, Koilol Haminhag the Achilas Peres Eilanis. V'hinei Kol Inyan B'Torah, Koila Amar Le'il B'Negel L'Goil Milas Minhag Yisrael, Tzarech Liyos Muvan Gam B'Derech HaPshat, Kedei Shekol Echad V'Echad MiYisrael Yuchol L'Havin Zois. Every Jew needs to be able to approach every part of Torah. So this idea about how great a custom is, it should not just be some type of spiritual, Kabbalistic, mystical thing. It has to be something that's understood by everyone. Pshat, the simple meaning of the text, is something that everybody has to understand. Hine halimud al derech hasoid shaykh leilo oiskim b'chapsa emes v'al derech zeh menagia lelimud al derech haremes v'adrush aval halimud al derech hapshat shaykh chol echad ve'echad v'hainu shezeh davar hashav l'chol nefesh. When we're learning Kabbalah, so a Kabbalah thing is for people that are students of Kabbalah. When we're learning a Talmudic derivation from a pasuk, so that's for people that studied Gemara and they know how to do that. But then there's the simple idea of anything that we do in Yiddishkeit. The pshat, the simple level, that's applicable to all. We're not supposed to be great mystics to appreciate it. We're not supposed to be great Talmudists to understand it. We have to be just a Yid. And just because we're Jewish, we can connect to that. Specifically, dealing with the pshat, with the simple meaning, that has, in a way, the deepest and highest things concealed in there. The Rebbe brings down what is brought down in Sfarim about Rashi. Rashi is also meant to explain Pshuti Shal Mikra, the simple meaning of the text. And on the other hand, it says that the greatest secrets of the Torah is hidden in Rashi's Pirush on Chumash. Let's skip over the brackets to the next paragraph. ועל דרך זה בנגיע לענייננו, ישנה דוגמה פשוטה שממנה אפשר להבין בפשטוס אז גודל האילוש ומנהג ישראל, ומזה יובן גם טעם המנהג שבט"ו בשבט מרבים באכילת פרס אילונס דווקא ולחיתו וסוירה כדלקמן. First of all, the Rebbe is going to say there's a simple explanation of why a Jewish custom has such great value and such great importance. And from understanding why, on a simple level, not according to Kabbalah, but on a simple level, why a Jewish custom has such great importance, then we will understand also why eating fruits of the tree is given precedence on the 15th of Shvat over eating wheat and barley, which is earlier in the pasuk. Va'abir b'zeh. Close achilush mechita v'soyda leperes ilon, which is Gefen Oteina Goymer, who shemechita v'soyda isim lechem, shudavar ha-muchrach l'kiyam ha'adam, v'ilu peres ilon ikar inyanam lifal hana v'tainu getel adam. What's the difference between when we talk about grains and we talk about fruits? Grains is a staple. We live off of bread, water. These are staples. Fruits are primarily not considered a staple. Of course, we've discovered in later years we need to have fruits for whatever reason. If we're going to have a diet without fruits, that's not healthy at all. But there were certain illnesses that sailors got on ships because they didn't have fruit stored. But whatever it is, but it's still, that's not the main idea. You don't usually say that fruits are made for health. Fruits are made for enjoyment. The grains, that's a staple. Chita osoida is a staple. Okay, mavur bekam mekoymes v'bir alash nabracha boir nefashas rabes v'chasroinon al kol masha barasa lahachis b'nefesh kol chay. One of the after brachas is boir nefashas. So in that bracha boir nefashas, we include two types of things that we're thanking Hashem for. Things that are basic necessities and things that are just for enjoyment. Shechesroinon, when it says that they have their lacks, that Hashem created people with things that they are lacking, in other words, things that they need. Staples of a person's diet. They give them life, in other words, like energize them, it's something what to live for. So that's referring on things that we eat for delight. So we see that in general in foods there's these two categories: staples and enjoyable foods. What happens when a person is hungry? First, a person that's hungry eats a staple. And then there's dessert. Then there's fruits. A person doesn't say, I'm starving, give me an apple. I'm starving. You have, sit down, eat a normal meal, which comprises of bread. Afal pikein yesh lamayl yiseda v'peiros ha'ilon me'achar shem goyim hana v'tainug la'odam ha'she'enki chita v'soida she'in yonim rak lamalach chsaron shlo yiroiv. From this we see that on the one hand, of course, the staple is very important. This is necessary for survival. On the other hand, things that are necessities are not as valuable and not as important as things that are done out of enjoyment. We see this as well. It's brought down in Sfarim, this idea that the more Hashem was very kind to us, the more basic a certain human need is, the more available it is, and the less expense and effort you need to put out to get it. Breathing, something the whole time. The next thing that you need to have more of is water. Water is, again, much easier, much more available, less work, least expensive, if it's expensive at all, if it costs anything at all. Then there is staples. Staples in our food and our diet, this is the point over here, is something more available. Things that are already more enjoyable, things that are pleasurable, whether it's on our diet or in life in general. I want to have a beautiful house, I want to have nice furniture, I want to have a fancy car. That's already going to cost you more than even the most expensive meal. Because the less necessary something is, the more of a item of pleasure and enjoyment it is, the more valuable it is in worth. So the same thing when you talk about the staples, the food that are staples, like wheat and barley, versus you're talking about grapes, olives, etc., which are fruits, which are considered pleasure, these are more valuable. In a similar vein, a custom, he's going to explain, is beyond the staple. In our Torah mitzvahs, there's the staples of Torah mitzvahs, and then there's the pleasure of Torah mitzvahs that I am adding on my own. Kasher medubar, I just in hamafurish b'Torah Shebiksav, shafil atzdukim moedim bo b'Torah Shvat. Koil masher talmud vasik asul lechadish, haynu chidish anichol b'Torah Shvat b'Torah din v'loy b'Torah lak minhag ba'alma. Harikiyum inyan zeh eino goyrim tainug meyuchad etzel nefesh alekis. When a Jew fulfills something that's obligatory, whether it's in Chumash or whether it's in Gemara, but it's an obligation, so it doesn't cause such a delight by his godly soul. It's like food. It's like a necessity. You don't get so much delight from eating a staple. It's what I need to live. The Nefesh Elokis needs to follow Torah mitzvahs to live. Ki b'yoyse Yehudi she'olav namar v'am mechum tzadikim hari muchrich l'kaim es kol tzivuya Torah. V'adrab kashana gosei eina boif namasim hari ze goyrim tmio pliya k'mayim razoyer v'nefesh kisechta tvaha. The Zohar says on the pasuk that says in Chumash Vayikra, where it talks about the different korbanos brought for a person that did something wrong, so it says v'nefesh kisechta, a soul that will sin. So the Zohar says v'nefesh kisechta tvaha, it's a wonder. You're supposed to read it with a question mark. V'nefesh kisechta, a soul that will sin. It's totally incongruous. It totally doesn't feel right for the Nefesh Elokis to not follow the staples of Torah mitzvahs. Aval kasher medubar oidus kiyum minhag Yisrael she'eina muva b'Torah din or b'minhag Yisrael gufim. Loidak minhag shvarnes kabel b'chol tfutz Yisrael. Ki ein kol pella shemekayim minhag zeh b'Yosef ben Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov b'Asar Rivka Rachel v'Leah. If it's something that's already accepted and been done many, many times, Ela minhag shnes chadish bezmanenu koydem sheyedeh sheminhag zeh asur lispashet liskabel b'chol tfutz Yisrael. Hine me'achar she'ein zeh davar hamuchrich b'dugmas din b'Torah Shvat hadekiyum inyan zeh meivi v'goyrim tainug etzel nefesh elokis. In other words, the Rebbe is saying the newer the minhag is, the more delight it is. If it's a minhag that's been going on for thousands of years, which we don't have, let's say, a record of Tu B'Shvat being celebrated for thousands of years. The only record we have is the Mishnah, just calling it Rosh Hashanah, which doesn't mean that there was any celebration. So it's fairly recent that Tu B'Shvat was celebrated as a Yom Tov. So that causes much more delight by the Nafsh Halakis. It's not a staple, it's not a necessity, it's something that he's going and doing it out of, as we'll soon explain, the enjoyment that he has. Ubepashtas. Hasibah l'kiyum minhag zafil l'koydin sh'nispashit n'eskabel b'chol tfutz Yisrael he bera'oisei shezau inyan shaloi safa b'limud ha'toyra v'kiyum etzeseh b'hidur yoyse mekfi ha'muchrach. Just to give a silly example. There's always new little perks added to different things that in the beginning it wasn't considered like a necessity, and then it became, normal and standard. So think about it this way. Just give a very silly example. When cars first came out, there was no air conditioning. There was no radio even in the car, no entertainment system in the car. Then you had a few high-end cars that got, automatic, or they got radio, or they got air conditioning. The guys that had that was like, wow, I have this. Can you imagine a guy is going to say nowadays he's going to go drive a new car off the lot? He said, my car has air conditioning in it. Or my car has a radio in it. He said, what are you so excited about? The excitement is when you have something new, something that was not yet a necessity, it was not a staple. Nowadays, a guy would say, I don't have air conditioning, I can't live without it. Even if it's not in Florida, even if he'd be in Minnesota, whatever, he would say, how can you have a car without air conditioning? You can't have a car without air conditioning. So, because it became a staple. The same thing, a minhag, as opposed to Torah and Mitzvos, Torah and Mitzvos is a staple. I don't get excited about it, it's not such a big enjoyable thing. A minhag, eating fruits on Tu B'Shvat, wow, that's exciting. I've hit the big time. That's like I've got the latest gadget installed in my car. So he says, "V'lachein al yedeiza nifol tainug meyuchad eitzel haboirei." This also causes by Hashem a great delight. When my commitment to Hashem is only based on He told me to do it, so I'm doing it. He's bigger than me. I got to listen to him. He's my boss. Whatever the logic is, I got to do it, so I got to do it. But if I'm doing something for Hashem's sake, that's only a custom, I can get away without doing it. I'm not obligated in doing it. It's not necessary to do it. That causes by Hashem an even greater delight. Nois na Torah mitzava mitzvos, k'maimer nachasroch lefonai shamarti v'naser etzoini. When Hashem delights in something, so it causes by us delight as well. How come? This delight that the person has, this delight that Hashem delights in it, causes the person to also have a delight that he enjoys the fact, give a look what I did for Hashem. Give a look the enjoyment that I made for Hashem. Since the whole idea of the 15th of Shvat is about Minhag, and Minhag is about causing delight and pleasure, so how do we mark the idea of the delight and pleasure of a Minhag? That we are celebrating it by eating the delightful and enjoyable and pleasurable things, not the things that are the staple, not the wheat and barley. כאשר מגיע 15 יום בשבט, אומרים ליהודי נויסם לך באופן של מנהג יום שמחה נוסף, ובו מנהגים מיוחדים. כל המנהג דאכילס פרס אילונס. Why was this day given to us? כדי להוריד שכלולוס העבודה צריך להיות לא רק בנוגע לענייני התורה מצווה שמוכרח לקיימם, אלא באופן שלא יספה בעבודתו, כשהידי זה נפעל תענוג הבורא, ועד שתענוג הבורא נעשה תענוג הנברא. This is the lesson that we were given this Yom Tov for, so that we should increase in our Torah mitzvahs beyond doing just what's necessary, beyond just fulfilling and having the staples of Torah mitzvahs, but to do those parts of Torah mitzvahs that cause a special, unique delight by Hashem, and therefore a delight by us. ובפשטוס כאשר יהודי אוכל פרס אילם 15 בשבט ראשון לאילון וקודם אכילס הפרס מוידם מברך לקדוש ברוך הוא שברא פרס אלו ולאחרי אכילוסי מסיים בברכה האחרונה הנה ביודעי שאכילס הפרס אין הדבר המוכרח לקיומו על דרך הלחם אלא עניין של ענו ותענוג top of page ש"ד להכניס בנפש כל חי זה מרס שמנגיע לגופוי ישנם דברים המוכרחים וישנם דברים שהם לשם תענוג. He realizes there's things that are staples and things that are delight. הרי מעצמי מובן שכנו במקולשכים וקל וחומר ונגיע לנשמוסי. Whatever we see in our body, we see it's a reflection of what goes on in our soul. So if in our body there are things that are necessities and there are things that are extra and are considered a delight, the same thing in our neshama, there's also the two things. So when we sit down, the Rebbe says, on the 15th of Shvat, and we eat these fruits, and we make a bracha before, and we make a bracha afterwards, we are to remember that we're eating specifically fruits. Fruits which are a matter of delight and enjoyment and pleasure to teach us and to show us that our service and what our neshama needs is a service of delight for Hashem, an enjoyment and pleasure in serving Hashem, meaning going beyond the staples of Torah mitzvahs. He shouldn't be satisfied with what he's doing up till now. Bedugma se'inin the peres ha'ilon is tainug nivra, l'maylam is a tainug boide. We need to increase, and we have to go beyond to be able to reach this delight, both his own delight and the delight of Hashem. V'amaisa hu ha'ikr, kasher Yehudi mekayim sa'minhag da'achilas peres ha'ilon is 15 b'shvat. Hare kiyum minhag zeh, poyel nachas ruach de boide. Nachas ruach lefonai, she'amarti v'nasir etzoyni. This causes Hashem to have the light as well. It permeates the Jew. I, as a created being, have Hashem's delight permeate me. Just like when I eat fruits in the physical sense, this gives me physical delight. So too, the delight of Hashem should permeate my own being to literally permeate my physical body. It's interesting. It's brought down in places of Chassidus that when a person is enjoying good food on Shabbos is a mitzvah to eat good food, to eat delicious food, it should be permeated that with the awareness that I'm not just, sitting and enjoying food. But in this delight of the food, I'm delighting in the mitzvah of delighting in Shabbos. So even the physical delight is permeated with a spiritual delight. It's the same thing. The physical delight on the 15th of Shvat of the physical foods are really permeated with this delight of Hashem and the delight of His godly soul. וכמובן בפשטוס שכדי שיוכל לברך ברכה אחרונה על הפרס צריך לאכול כשיר. ועל דרך זה מובן שכאשר אומר הברכה האחרונה להכניס בנפש כל חי שזהו עניין התענוג, הרי זה קשור עם תענוג הגוף כפשוטו. So you need to eat enough to be able to make a bracha אחרונה. It's connect, and when you say להכניס בנפש כל חי, it has to do with the physical delight of the body. V'zoi ha'yirah b'negei l'poil, she'b'negei l'chol inyanei toiv v'kedusha, ein li stapik, ha'amodim atzavi b'hoive. Gam kasher misnag al pi Shulchan Aruch b'shleimus. Even if the person's doing everything that says in Shulchan Aruch, he shouldn't be satisfied with that. All of lahoysev avidasa yoyser mekfi ha'mechuyev, shaydeza nifel klos inyan ha'tainug. By the way, this is the whole idea of Chassidus, really. One of the inyanim, the Gemara says, what is a chassid? Who is a chassid? Someone that goes lefnim mishuras hadin, beyond the letter of the law. This is the message that Rebbe is telling us. To have true enjoyment is expressed in going beyond. It goes beyond all boundaries. Okay, here the Rebbe is going to explain, in mitzvahs itself, there is the delight of the mitzvah, and there is the regular component of the mitzvah. In other words, now we explain there's mitzvahs, which are staples, and then there's customs, which is called the delight, the enjoyment part. Now we're going to say when we do a mitzvah, there could be the staple type of performance of the mitzvah. You're doing it because that's what it says, or if you're doing it with feeling and passion, so then you feel a delight in the mitzvah. That's also the message of the 15th of Shvat, the fruits of the tree. Habir bezabavodas adam ba'imik yoser klalos havoda the limra Torah v'kiyam hamitzvos yechola lias gam top of shinhei ba'ofen the mitzvahs hanoshim l'mada like avonas. A person can do it out of habit, without any intention, without any type of meaning to it. It becomes meaningless. It's by rote. He puts on tefillin every morning. He doesn't even think about it. He does it automatically. You could do Torah mitzvahs with intention. It says in Shulchan Aruch that when you put on your hand tefillin, you have to think about giving your heart over to Hashem. You put on your tefillin on your head. You have to have in mind that you're giving your mind over to Hashem. So there is kavanah, but still in all, you tachen shetiyasa shavoida tiyasa bekridus. Skip the parentheses. It's possible to still do it in a very cold manner. There's many different levels of how a person could be passionate about his fulfilling of Torah and Mitzvos. So the Rebbe says there's always room to grow with our passion and our enjoyment of Torah and Mitzvos. Ubepashtas gam kasher avoid nasim techamimis v'islavos yeshnem b'zer kama dargis. There's ava stam, an ordinary love of Hashem. Ava rabba, great love. Ava krish be'esh, a flaming, fiery love. V'ava v'rotze echigodl, the greatest type of love and yearning for Hashem. Ad sherak halimud bedrushik v'yus anu marasham shesein amvayim mishlil se'in l'rotze lo'ishuv. The Rebbe Rashab speaks about how you're not supposed to have a yearning for Hashem without a return. The only thing that holds him back from expiring because of his great yearning for Hashem is because he learned that Rabbi Rashab said you're not supposed to expire in your yearning for Hashem. So therefore, we see there's all different types of levels of being passionate in my connection to Hashem and my Torah mitzvahs. When we speak about avodah out of delight, there's many different levels. Let's skip over to the next page, Shin Vav. Let's go to let's skip down to the second paragraph from the bottom. Why we eat fruits of the tree, to increase in holiness, to increase in all matters that cause by Hashem delight. When a person is inspired on this date to add and to increase in his delight, so then Hashem responds in kind. You go beyond, so I'm going to go beyond in my relationship with you. Minhagim HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'ofen shel midah keneged midah, measure for measure. Hainu noisav l'zeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu nois kol tzracha b'banach hayim azoyin revichei shebezem b'chuyiv HaKadosh Baruch Hu al pi din k'mei shkasav sheir k'sus v'yinas lo yigara. Just like we have an obligation towards Hashem, the staples, the same thing Hashem is obligated to us in staples as well. To give us children, to give us life and health, to give us sustenance in a comfortable way. Like it says that a husband is obligated to support his wife in all her needs. The same thing, we are considered Hashem's brides. Hashem is obligated to support us. But that's only a staple. That's only what he's obligated in. But when we go beyond the staple, when we devote ourselves to Hashem in a way of delight, not just doing what it says in Shulchan Aruch, so then Hashem's return to us is the same as well. That Hashem simply adds to us in the most greatest way possible in all of these brachas. ועד שבוים לתחס השלם שבין התיינו גם שכול שבס ומנוחה לחיי לום בגולה הסידה כמבוא ברוך בהמשך תפש סמכבוב אז יהיה שלם התיינו will come to the ultimate delight of Mashiach's times. ועל פי פסק דין אדמו"ר הזוקם שולחן ערוך יש ליטם ותבשילם בערב שבס ותבליטם מכל תבשל ותבשל. That's a mitzvah to taste from the Shabbos foods before Shabbos. מובן שגם כאשר נמצאים בימי הגולס אחרונים ערב הגולה הסידה יום שכול שבס תוימים כבר מן התיינו לעשות לוי. This means that even now we are like on Friday afternoon in relationship to the Geula. The Geula is like in Mashiach's times is like in the Shabbos. Now we're at the cusp of the coming of Mashiach. It's like Friday afternoon. So just like on Friday afternoon, Shulchan Aruch says we have to taste from every Shabbos food, the same thing now we have to experience from the delight of Mashiach's times as well. Nifol gam am shachas in a tainug by fnaila yois masher am shachas a tainug adato. Ukamr leil shakash Yehudi maila bekoidish benagel the close avoid the limra Torah vekim tsam tach tainug hare gam HaKadosh Baruch Hu maila bekoidish benagel am shachas berchoisav ba'ofen shel tainug noisav am milutzrachav achrechim revicha ba'ofen shel ashiras. He gives it in a way of riches above and beyond just giving us staples.